Welcome back to Legal Lens Zimbabwe, where we break down the intersection of law, policy, and development into bite-sized, brain-boosting lessons. Today, we're diving into one of the most comprehensive scholarly contributions to the field of law and development, Yong Shik Lee's general theory of law and development. Ready to upgrade your legal fluency? Let's get into it. For over 4 decades, scholars have explored the complex relationship between law and development. But despite a wealth of case studies and debates, there has long been a gap, a missing link, a unified theory explaining how and why law affects development outcomes. Enter Professor Yong Shik Lee. In his groundbreaking work, Lee proposes a general theory of law and development. His goal? To define the field's parameters and provide a systematic framework for understanding how law can promote, or obstruct, economic and social development. Lee understood that to build a solid theory, we first need context. Lee traces the history of the law and development field through 2 key movements. Driven largely by American legal scholars, the first wave focused on transplanting Western legal institutions into developing countries. It assumed that modern laws would naturally lead to economic growth. Spoiler alert, it didn't quite work out that way. Then came the second movement. This wave emerged in response, recognizing the need for local context, institutional capacity, and more grounded legal reform. Still, even this more cautious approach lacked a unified theoretical backbone. Lee also clarifies key concepts like law, legal frameworks, and institutions, and how they relate to broader development strategies. He stresses that these are not just legal artifacts, they're tools of regulation and transformation. Before we can ask how law drives development, we need to define what development actually means. Lee goes beyond GDP. He embraces a multidimensional view that includes economic growth, social progress, institutional strength, and human development. Think Amartya Sen meets legal theory. Interestingly, Lee also expands the scope to include developed countries. Even advanced economies face challenges like inequality, regulatory failure, and institutional decay. And yes, law plays a role there too. This is where the theory gets practical. Lee identifies 3 critical elements that determine how legal rules actually influence development. 1. Regulatory design. How well are laws and policies crafted? Are they clear, context-specific, and aimed at real development goals? 2. Regulatory compliance. Do people follow these laws? What incentives or enforcement mechanisms are in place? 3. Quality of implementation. Do governments have the capacity and political will to carry out the law effectively? According to Lee, these elements are interconnected. Even the best law on paper means nothing without effective implementation. And even strong enforcement can fall flat if the design is flawed or politically manipulated. So, what does Lee's theory look like in real life? He applies it to South Korea's transformation between 1962 and 1996. Korea's economic miracle wasn't just about good policy. It involved deliberate legal reforms, strong institutions, and effective regulation tailored to evolving socioeconomic conditions. This example shows how a country can use the law not just to regulate, but to actively engineer development. It's not magic, it's law in action.
Let me bless these folks with my siren voice and take it from here. Application of the general theory in South Korea's development. Yong Shik Lee systematically applies his general theory of law and development to South Korea's transformative economic and social progress between 1962 and 1996. Through this empirical case, he meticulously explores how distinct legal frameworks, development policies, institutions, and socioeconomic conditions interacted to contribute to the country's success. Legal frameworks and development policies. The analysis begins with an in-depth examination of the legal frameworks that underpin South Korea's development. These frameworks established a robust foundation for governance, trade, and industrial growth. Lee highlights how South Korea's policymakers enacted laws that incentivized innovation, protected investments, and ensured a stable legal environment conducive to economic activities. For example, laws regulating foreign direct investments were carefully designed to attract capital while safeguarding national interests, balancing economic openness with developmental priorities. Moreover, Lee underscores the role of development policies in shaping South Korea's trajectory. The government implemented a series of 5-year economic plans, focusing on industrialization, export-driven growth, and technological advancement. These policies were not only visionary, but also actionable, enabled by a responsive and adaptive legal structure that allowed the state to recalibrate its strategies when necessary. Institutional strength and governance. Central to Lee's analysis is the role of institutions in fostering development. South Korea's institutions were characterized by high levels of state capacity and bureaucratic efficiency. Lee argues that these institutions were pivotal in ensuring that policies were effectively implemented and that laws were uniformly enforced. For instance, economic regulatory bodies were empowered to oversee industrial growth, monitor compliance with trade laws, and mitigate the risks of corruption. The analysis also delves into the relationship between law and governance, emphasizing how legal institutions helped balance political control with economic freedom. Transparent judicial systems and anti-corruption initiatives enhanced trust in the government, creating an environment where businesses could thrive without fear of legal uncertainty. Socioeconomic conditions and adaptation. Lee's work does not neglect the importance of socioeconomic conditions. He examines how South Korea's unique socio-political context, marked by a highly educated workforce, strong cultural emphasis on discipline, and collective national identity, created favorable conditions for the successful application of legal frameworks and policies. The alignment between societal values and institutional goals facilitated smoother implementation of laws and regulations. Additionally, Lee highlights the adaptability of South Korea's legal and institutional mechanisms in responding to external pressures, such as globalization and economic crises. This adaptability ensured that South Korea remained competitive on the global stage while addressing domestic challenges. Regulatory impact mechanisms in action. Finally, Lee employs the 3 elements of regulatory impact mechanisms: regulatory design, compliance, and quality of implementation to evaluate South Korea's success. He provides concrete examples of how well-designed regulations, such as those promoting export industries, were supported by high compliance rates and effective enforcement. The quality of implementation, influenced by political will and state capacity, ensured that the intended benefits of these regulations were fully realized. For example, Lee examines how laws incentivizing the development of heavy industries, such as steel and shipbuilding, were not merely aspirational, but backed by meticulous planning, robust enforcement, and consistent evaluation. The synergy between regulatory elements created a virtuous cycle of growth, innovation, and equitable development. Lee's analysis of South Korea's development demonstrates the practical applicability of his general theory of law and development. By highlighting the interplay between legal frameworks, institutional strength, development policies, and socioeconomic conditions, he provides a comprehensive understanding of how law can serve as a catalyst for development. South Korea's case stands as a testament to the transformative power of well-designed legal and regulatory systems, offering valuable lessons for other nations seeking sustainable development. The article concludes by affirming that law matters for development subject to local variances. It emphasizes the importance of regulatory design, compliance, and implementation quality, influenced by state capacity and political will, in determining the effectiveness of law and development. The article aims to provide a theoretical framework to better understand the role of law in development and improve the effectiveness of future law reform projects. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you won't miss the next episode where we keep making the law make sense. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and keep looking at the world through the legal lens Zimbabwe.